All right, What's on Tap is brought to you by Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL. Here's the matchups with the highest point totals going into this weekend. Sundays are easy to enjoy when they are full of football and the fridge is filled with beer. These are the games we're locking in on, starting with the 49ers traveling to Tampa Bay to take on the Bucs. The Niners are 6.5-point favorites here, guys, with all the Bucs injuries. But more importantly, Matthew, the over-under is set at 50 for this game.
Yeah, I mean, you've got two very good offenses, two defenses that have struggled so far this year. Baker is practicing today, by the way. We expect him to go. To me, I think the bigger question, we've already talked about Chris McCaffrey. I think you're starting him. You're obviously starting Debo. I think the Buccaneers running backs are merely flex plays that you hope fall into the end zone. I think Brock Purdy, and I did a radio hit yesterday where I was asked Brock Purdy or Baker Mayfield, and I said Purdy. Yeah. And they were like, really? And I said, well, he's had 2 weeks to prepare. He gets Chris McCaffrey back. He gets Juwan Jennings back. Baker banged up, and, all of his weapons are banged up. Both guys top 10 plays this week, but Purdy over Mayfield for me. I think the big question here is the wide receivers of the 49ers, Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, guys. And look, I am at wide receiver 33. Here's the positives, right? Obviously, the Buccaneers, they struggle in their secondary, including in the slot. They give the second most yards per game to the slot. 58% of Juwan Jennings' targets this year have come from the slot. So that's somebody where he lines up a lot, and it's an area to attack. Having said that, we don't know how healthy he is. He's missed a bunch of time. It's his first game back where McCaffrey's going to be on the field as well, and we expect, obviously, McCaffrey to touch the ball a lot. Does Ricky Pearsall cut into his targets? I'm at 33, so I just think there's some risk there. He's a flexy, risky kind of guy because the upside's tremendous, but they do have a lot of mouths to feed in San Francisco. I'm not starting Ricky Pearsall. I'm at wide receiver 41, just outside of my top 40. He hasn't played a game this year with Juwan Jennings. So we don't know what Pearsall's target share will be with Jennings out there. Healthy Debo, healthy Kittle, healthy McCaffrey. Again, a lot of mouths to feed.
Yep. Juwan Jennings is set at 38.5 receiving yards on DraftKings, which seems a reasonable number, kind of a middle ground. Now, he could skyrocket over that. He could also go well under that and just be kind of unsighted. So I agree. Just with all the uncertainty, like if you were to order the receiving priorities on the team, like it's clearly Kittle and Debo as tier one, and then McCaffrey might even be ahead of Juwan Jennings. That wouldn't be shocking. And then Pearsall as well. So just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of upside, but a lot of uncertainty. So probably go elsewhere if you can.
Our next game has an even higher total. Dolphins at Rams. 50.5 is the point total for this one. The Rams are favored by just 1 point here, Jay. But when you look at the Miami side of things, what do you do with Tyreek Hill right now? Do you just kind of hold on and hope for the best considering where you drafted him?
I think so. I'm not sure. Like right now, you'd be selling Tyreek at his lowest point, really. And to me, the concern with Tyreek, it's not so much the yards. He's been 72, 80 the past 2 weeks since Tua came back. It's the lack of targets, where he's only had 14 targets the past 2 weeks. This is a guy who last year was consistently seeing targets 12, 13, 14. He was an absolute weapon, and I just wonder that, he's been on the injury report consistently. He's on the other side of 30, whether this has just kind of piled up, and he's still an elite wide receiver, but he's perhaps not the best wide receiver in football playing at that level.
I have at wide receiver 13. Look, there's cause for optimism here, right? It's a nice matchup with the Rams, right? No team allows more yards per reception to wide receivers than the LA Rams. They give up 15.6, right? So they allow these big plays. They allow these deep passes. They've allowed the third most yards in the NFL on deep passes, targets that are 15 or yards more downfield. So that plays into Tyreek Hill's skill set. But to your point, he's got a 21% target share since Tua return. Like last year, that was 33%. Right? He's had one game this year, literally one game. This is week one with more than 14 fantasy points. This is the guy that went in the top 5 of every fantasy draft out there. So he's a wide receiver 2, not the wide receiver 1 you drafted him to be. But if there is a week 2 for him to get going again, it feels like this week, given the matchup with the Rams, just because they do struggle there. But other than Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane, I don't feel good about any Dolphin. I'm not starting Waddle, right, and I don't love Tua. You know,
maybe Mostert scores.
Yeah, maybe Mostert gets in the end zone, but you don't feel good about that.
No, I don't think. Jalen Waddle, his receptions prop is 3.5.
That's crazy.
You think about what he was doing back in his rookie year. He set a 42.5 receiving yards in a super favorable matchup. Without weather against the suspect defense, the fact that Jalen Waddle's completely unsighted against Buffalo until effectively the final drive of the game where he scores that touchdown and then loses 23 yards
on the pitch play
at the end. So Is there something wrong with him physically? It's just the offense? Has he just gotten worse at football? What's going on with
I think this offense is just a mess, right? And yes, they're scoring points with Tua back under center, but it doesn't feel like they have the same rhythm and flow as they used to. They're throwing the ball to Jonnu Smith a lot too, like designed throws to Jonnu Smith. So there's a lot of problems. This offensive line's in bad shape too. I think Jared Verse and Braden Fisk are going to have a big day for the Rams pass rush, which doesn't make you feel better about the non-Tyreek Hill options.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
It just feels anecdotally that there is it's a lot more short stuff, a lot less of those kind of deep Jalen Waddle crosses over the middle of the field.
Which is his game.
Yes. And I wonder if that's just, the combination of the offensive line, meaning that they need to get the ball out quicker, and they already got it out really quickly. Tua as well, just kind of getting reaccustomed. Like, Tua hasn't played 3 weeks in a row this season yet. So I just wonder if all those factors, there still has to be a lot of upside in Jalen Waddle. He has so much talent, but it is bizarre and a huge red flag that both him and Tyreek just haven't been able to get going.
Yeah. I wonder if Mike McDaniel's on the hot seat. You know what I mean? Like, his name hasn't come up, right? But sometimes you see this with coaches where they raise the expectations. They come and they do a great job. And the Dolphins were a mess before he showed up. And then they sort of raise the expectations, but then they haven't gotten past that. And you can sit here and say, like, well, Tua's been hurt and that kind of stuff, but still, like, they've underperformed. They're 2-7, right? And maybe that's on the general manager as well for not having better backups, and
which is another issue.
Another issue as well. But you just wonder, the Dolphins generally are not one of those teams that do a lot of turnover. Stephen Ross is generally, as an owner, has been fairly patient over the years, but just sort of wonder, like, I don't know, like, if they finish the year with like 4 wins.
Yeah. To me, the Colts game was the big indictment on McDonald, because Tyreek Hill had 1 catch. Like, how in any NFL game can Tyreek Hill only have 1 catch? He had 2 targets in that game. Like, that, to me, that's just so bizarre. I will never forget with Mike McDaniel, how in that playoff game against Buffalo, how they just couldn't get the plays in to Scarlett Thompson.
Right.
That was the first red flag. It's like, how does this keep happening? Like, why can't we get the plays in? How is this not working? So, I don't know. Like, by all accounts, like, the scheme is magnificent. He's a great offensive mind, but just something seems to have gone wrong.
Yeah, I don't think it's a lock that he's back. The thing with the Dolphins is they're in the red in the salary cap after this season. The red.
Yeah.
So
no, they went all in on this.
This was the year. Like, and you could retool, but there was big expectations this year, and they're not even. The Tua injury just completely derailed the season. I don't know if that's a good enough excuse, honestly, when you're that in on a roster.
The offense looked completely just non-functional when Tua was out in ways that it doesn't really make sense why it looked that bad.
I mean, like, it's not a fair comparison, but I mean, the Vikings went into the season expecting J.J. McCarthy to be their starter, and Sam Darnold was the backup, and now they had
a great plan,
and they had a great plan. I mean, even the Colts, right? I mean, I get that Joe Flacco was embarrassing on Sunday night, but the Colts are still in the playoff hunt, right? Richardson's been bad this year, and still, but they've schemed up Joe Flacco enough that they're still in the playoff hunt.
Yep.
So I mean, there's just
what it ultimately comes down to. There was 4 weeks that Tua was out, and they scored 40 points in 4 weeks against middling defenses. And some of those games were like the Colts and the Don't to score 10 points in that game. It was just, very disappointing season from the Dolphins. They've had injuries, like they're missing Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, their 2 best edge rushers, but still, like, the defense hasn't been the issue. The defense has been, middle of the pack fine. This is supposed to be a great offense.
Yeah. Our final game here, guys. The Lions are favored by 3.5 points at Houston, where you guys are going to be for fantasy football pregame. The over-under is 48.5. Matthew, can you start Jameson Williams in this game?
No, you cannot. There you go. Did you want me to elaborate on that? Fine, I will elaborate on that. The 4 games prior to his suspension, he had an 11% target share. He had 3 or fewer receptions in each one of those games. Week 2 is the last time Jameson Williams saw an end zone target. We don't know what, he's been out for 2 games with the suspension, and the Lions offense hasn't missed a beat. The Texans are, by the way, when you think about them defensively, over the last month, they're 12th against the run. They're 5th against the pass. Like, that's a really good secondary that they have in Houston. Like, the defense overall is good. But I would expect on the road, on Sunday night, prime time, on NBC and Peacock, I'm a company man, that I think what Detroit wants to do, which is what they normally want to do, they're going to run the ball. I think this is a big David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs game. Yes, Amon-Ra St. Brown will get his looks, but I think they're going to try to run the ball against the Texans, and obviously we know what Houston wants to do, especially because we don't expect Nico Collins on the other side of the ball. It's really only Tank Dell offensively. They're going to try to run the ball with Joe Mixon. So, we expect – I think this is I'd probably take the under in this game at 48.5. Primetime unders just in general, last night notwithstanding. But you know what I mean? Like, this feels like a run-heavy game on both sides of the ball.
Yep. I think the biggest weakness of the Houston defense is they give up a lot of explosive runs. And what is the Detroit Lions, what is their whole ethos built around? It's generating explosives on the ground. So I suspect that is probably how this is going to play out. Now on the other side of the ball, this Houston offense just isn't very good at the moment. It just hasn't been very effective really all season long in ways that haven't really made sense. And now Stephon Diggs out, Nico Collins, huge question mark with his practice status. And they're banged up on the offensive line too. So I think they're going to struggle to score. And then on the other side, I think the Lions will be very run heavy. There's just so many mouths on that Lions offense now. Even guys like Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick's good. He needs to be involved in some way. Yeah,
Sam Laporta can't get more than a 10% target share, and he's Sam Laporta.
Amon-Ra St. Brown has these games where he has one catch.
Yeah, they're comfortably in control.
Yes.
That's what's crazy about it.
It is. They're just... Anyway, so I have Jameson Williams outside my top 40. No, I'm not starting him. I think in this game, you're starting the usual suspects. I do think you can start Tank Dell. You're starting Joe Mixon. Not crazy about C.J. Stroud, obviously, but you're starting the Lions running backs, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You probably have to start Laporta again just because he's a tight end, but you don't feel great about it. And then Goff is just one of those, what other choices do you have? I think he's a low-end QB1, high-end QB2 this week. And that's where I have the range for him.
That'll do it for What's on Tap, presented by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.